This morning's demonstration is about making coil, to make a coil pot or a coil project. You can use coil for many different things. In the beginning, the learning process is pretty much through making a coil pot. Here is a very basic but interesting looking coil pot because of the way that they ended up having this pot not just be straight up and down but kind of curved and asymmetrical. So this is kind of a cool little coil pot. Here is another coil pot that's a little bit more standard for a beginning project, and it is built on a slab that was made into a rectangle, and then the coil was stacked up on top of that rectangle and then welded on the inside, which means it is smooth on the inside, and then glazed finally. Here's another relatively beginner project where the person took the coils, weaved them or just kind of twisted them before they added them onto the slab. And then they added a coil in the shape of a heart on the outside. So that made this one a little bit more interesting. Not is it just braided, but also has the heart in the front. And now some people are getting more experimental, and they're adding more decorative pieces to the outside of the coil, as well as putting some on into the middle of the coil as they work it. This one does the same thing. So they took straight coil from the bottom, and then here they had this weaved coil through the middle, and down here towards the bottom. Looks kind of cool. And then always finishing it off with a straight set of coil on the top to give it an even top. This one is a little bit different. This one has coil on the bottom, and then separating the bottom from the top. This is a pinch pot made to make it into kind of a decanter, and then a little lid, and then handles were made from coil for this bamboo handle that you can put on later. And I have some of these. If you're interested in making something with bamboo handle, I have some. Just you need to let me know, and we need to plan for the sizing of it. So these are some good examples of things that you can do with coil. I'm going to move these down so you guys can see better when I'm demonstrating. Like I said before, I kind of avoided using coil for a long time because I really had a hard time getting it to come out right. And what I mean by that was, when I was rolling my coils, I had a really hard time getting them round, like a round pencil. Mine always ended up being like flattened out, like floppy. So I'd be rolling them and it sounded like I get a flat tire and I couldn't figure it out. And so I just stopped and I'd use that as it was, and I just got frustrated with it to the point where I kind of stopped doing it, and I even stopped teaching it for a while because it was just frustrating. I figured if it was frustrating for me, it's frustrating for you, and it didn't work out well. But then a teacher colleague of mine heard me talking about it, and she said, "Oh, your problem is really quite simple, Mr. Irving. I can show you what you're doing wrong." And so I'm going to demonstrate what I was doing and then how I solved the problem. So to work with coil, it's cool because you get to work directly with the clay right off your bag. There is no waiting for the clay to dry in this project, and you do have to keep it moist while you're working on it. So if you're not finished with it the first day, you have to make sure to get it straight into a bag, wrap it up, and keep it wrapped up so that you can continue working on it the next day, because it needs to be moist when you're working on it. So I'm going to start with just taking a chunk of clay off the top of my bag like this, and then I am going to slice a slice off the side, similar to like a slice of bread, and I can do a few of these or a couple of these. And then from here, I'm going to slice again. So I get a piece like this. And I can have multiples of these. They don't have to be exactly the same size, but I'm going to do several of these, and I'll show you why. I had just, whoops, that was not so good. But I have these ready to go. If you have the more that these are the same, if you make these all the same exact shape, then rolling them out is going to be more of a similar process. Some of mine are not the same size. I know they're going to make bigger or different size coils. So if you'll notice, I don't have a lot of water available for this project because I don't need it. I'm just taking the sponge, I squeeze the water out, and I'm just going to wipe down a section of the board, make sure it doesn't have a lot of clay chunks on it, and also just to put a little tiny bit of moisture into the board. Not a bunch of water on there, otherwise this is too slippery and it won't work. So how do you think I get this from being square to round. Rolling it. And this was my big problem. I would take this thing and do what is natural, and I would just roll it like this. Did you hear that it stopped making noise? It was like flopping for a second and then it stopped. But then I would just like keep going, and then it would start to get floppy again. And to the point where I couldn't, and of course it's not doing it now. But the problem was I was only rolling like from here to here. And then it would start to get floppy, and I could not get it to go away, no matter how hard I tried. What my colleague told me, the other teacher told me, was, Miss Irving, you're just not rolling it far enough on your hand. You need to do a longer roll on here. So going from the tip of my finger to the end of my hand, tip of my finger to the end of my hand, and then it works. Now, this is a good coil right here. Remember, about the thinnest it should be is like the thickness of a pencil in the beginning. This thing is getting kind of long and it's hard to manage, so I'm cutting this part off, moving it over, and I'll finish rolling this one just on its own like that and move that over there. So now I've got a couple of coils ready to go. I'm going to take another piece, kind of flatten it out a little bit, make it a little bit more squared, and then same thing again. Roll this from the tip of my fingers to the end of my palm. If I want to try and keep this as a long coil, I just need to work my two hands together, moving this around. If you notice, I'm working on the part of the board that I added a little bit of water to. So I take this coil and put it up here. Do the same thing. I'm going to flatten this guy out. What am I missing to start building a coil pot? Slip? You said slip. We don't use slip with this one. You said slab. So we do need a slab base for this to start it with. This project, you do not need slip for it. That's because we're working with clay that is right off of the bag, and we're going to do a process called welding. Remember, I talked about that in the other room? So what is welding again?
Blending.
Yeah, blending them together. So taking the clay and just kind of rubbing it together and blending the coil to the next coil to the next coil. And you usually do blend or weld about 3 coils together at a time. That is what I found to be kind of the best. So I'm going to take a piece of clay off of here so that I can roll out a slab. You need sticks and a roller. Anytime your roller has anything stuck to it, like these little pieces of clay, if you don't get the little chunks of clay off of there, then those will make dents in your slab. You guys probably learned that already. But if you didn't, now you know where those dents came from. So I'm just going to, I dampened it a little bit so it wouldn't cause dust, and I'm just trying to scrape these off into the little bowl of water. So that's now ready to go. Take this, 2 sticks so I don't get this too thin. Am I boring you guys over there? Good. Okay, no matter what the shape of my coil pot is going to be, I always start with my slab bigger than that and not necessarily the same shape. So what is a shape of a coil pot that you could make? Give me a shape. Circle, right? What else?
Hexagon. Octagon,
Square, octagon, rectangle, heart-shaped. Okay? Star. Star would be difficult. I'll start with a heart-shaped box. Okay? So I'm going to take my coil, my first coil, and I'm going to try and shape it into the shape of a heart. as it came down to where it met up, I just start overlapping it again. You guys can't see this very well from there, but I'm going to lift it up. I'm just kind of pushing it down so it doesn't move. All right, so look, I started my coil pot like that. You guys see it? So that's just me taking the coil, putting it in the shape of a heart, rolling it around till it overlaps, and now I'll take the second piece of coil. I'm going to, when you see in the end, it looks like it's got a little dark hole there. I pinch that off because it could be a little air trapped in the end. So I take that off. I'm going to start over again here. And then I'm just going to overlap just a little bit right where that one ended. Keep going. Do you remember what I said was a good amount of coils to weld together? I just said it today. Three. So I'm going to get this stacked about 3 coils high, and then I'll demonstrate the welding part. So it's got 2 on this side, 3 on this side. So I'll just take one of these, well, I'll just take the longer one. I'll just keep going and pinch the end of this thing off. Keep going. All right, now this is a little tricky, this part here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my finger or my thumb or whatever reaches in there best, and I'm going to push kind of halfway through this coil while holding my other hand behind it. If I don't put my other hand behind it, it's going to push all the coils off the wall. It's going to knock them off. So I have to hold them on while I push through and blend them together. I think I'm going to show you guys the video tomorrow because you can see it way better on the video. Not only does it attach them, but it makes it smooth on the inside. So especially if you're making something like a mug for drinking or anything that's going to eventually hold water, this is pretty much imperative that you do this. I'm going to stop in a minute. I'm not going to go all the way around with this thing because I want to just kind of demonstrate the difference between what it looks like before you weld it and what it looks like after you weld it. And you can see this process can go relatively quickly. It's about preparing. Preparing your coils. Don't get too many ready, because if you get too many ready and you don't use them, they dry out. So I would make 5 or 6 coils, start working with them, and then if you need more, you make more, and you just kind of keep going. And then you can get used to how fast you work and how many you need. So if you want to take a little bit of a video shot of in there, where it's been welded together, and then the other side where it's not. Okay. And then, so the rest of what you do here is you can continue to build this piece up. For experimenting purposes with my heart box, I may take a couple pieces like this, put them into like a rectangular shape, take them off. I could weld it first before I stick it on. Just weld this little piece from the back so that's easier for me to deal with. And then I can just start stacking these things up in different places. If I want to add a heart within a heart, that might be a little bit more challenging, but I think I might be able to handle it. I don't know. So I'm taking these, I'm just kind of coiling them around, trying to get them into the shape of a heart. It kind of looks like a heart, right? And then I would weld the back of this. Continue to try and shape it up to make sure it still looks like a heart when I'm done. And then I can take this, and I could add this on to my coil pot. I could put it to the outside of the coil pot later, or I can just take these shapes and line them up. And then when you're done with your shapes, you would take another piece of coil and roll it over the top before you start welding. And this would help hold it all together. Okay? This is what I'm talking about with your first piece experimenting. All right, you guys have a good idea of how to begin?
Yes.
All right, good. Good luck experimenting. Have fun.